The envelope on my doorstep looked like trouble, thick, taped like someone was trying to imprison whatever was inside, and stamped with a screaming red final notice that felt more like a threat than a warning. I didn't hesitate. I ripped it open because bad news is like a wound. Better to expose it quickly than let it fester under the skin. Inside was a lawsuit. A real one. Court-stamped. Signed. Filed. The Oakcrest Homeowners Association versus Daniel Mercer. For a moment, all I could do was laugh. A dry, incredulous, almost hysterical laugh. Oakcrest? I didn't even live in Oakcrest. My house was on Pine Hollow Road, close enough to see their meticulously trimmed lawns, but far enough to avoid their HOA madness. I had checked the plat map 3 different times when I bought the property, specifically to avoid nightmare associations like this. I remembered that satisfying little dotted line that stopped right at the end of my driveway, safely on the other side of the HOA's reach. But the accusation in the lawsuit was crystal clear. Failure to pay HOA dues for 3 years. Outstanding balance, $4,862. Court fees pending. My laughter vanished. This wasn't a letter. This wasn't a mistake. This was an attempt to drain me dry. Always. HOAs had power. Real power. They could lien your property. They could ruin your credit. They could force a sale. For dues I didn't even owe. My hands shook as I flipped through the stack of papers. They claimed I used HOA-maintained facilities. They claimed I'd signed a membership agreement. They claimed I'd ignored warnings. Every sentence was a lie. The next morning, I drove straight to the county property office with a copy of everything. The clerk, an older woman with half-moon glasses and a permanent expression of weary patience, examined my documents. "You're not in the HOA," she confirmed without hesitation. "Your property never has been." "So why?" I asked slowly. "Am I being sued?" She sighed, the kind of sigh someone gives when they've seen this exact mess before. "Oakcrest HOA is overly litigious," she said. "They've sued a few homeowners over the years. Mostly people near the borders. Border properties. Like mine." Something cold slid down my spine. When I walked out of that office, I wasn't confused anymore. I was angry. The type of anger that sits low, simmering like an ember ready to ignite. They could have asked. They could have checked records. They could have shown a shred of human decency. Instead, they slapped me with a lawsuit and waited for me to roll over. They wanted a fight. Fine. I'd give them one. At the pre-hearing conference a week later, the HOA board sat around a long table like a flock of judgmental buzzards. Their president, Graham, a thin man with the self-satisfied smirk of someone who'd never been told no in his life, leaned back in his chair as if he already owned me. "Mr. Mercer," he said smoothly, "glad you're finally willing to resolve this matter." "I don't owe you anything," I said, dropping the plat map on the table. "I'm not part of Oakcrest." He didn't bother looking at the map. "We expanded the HOA boundary 3 years ago," he said. "Your property is included." I felt my anger spike like a burst of electricity. "You can't do that," I said. "You can't forcibly annex properties without the owner's consent." Graham smiled, a slow, oily smile that told me he thought he had won before the battle even began. "Our bylaws allow it." Court was scheduled for 2 weeks later. That night, I sat at my dining table with documents spread out like I was preparing for war. Because I was. I searched everything I could find about Oakcrest HOA. Lawsuits, meeting minutes, boundary filings, amendments. I expected to find some sloppy record-keeping or misunderstanding, but what I found instead made my skin crawl. Oakcrest HOA had sued 11 homeowners in the past 5 years. All of them lived on the edges of the neighborhood. All of them had received boundary adjustments that conveniently expanded the HOA a little farther outward each time. This wasn't random. This wasn't sloppy. It was a strategy. They were inflating their membership by force, one property at a time, and using lawsuits to bully people into compliance. And then I found it, the one thing that changed everything. Buried in the transcript of an annual board meeting was a quote, Graham's voice recorded for posterity. "If we expand the borders just a little each year, we can double the property count. People don't read the fine print. They'll cave once they get sued." I printed it 3 times, Not because I needed to, but because it felt good to see his smugness on paper, exposed and undeniable. The next morning, I brought everything to an attorney, a face, sharp-eyed woman named Mara who flipped through the documents like she was slicing through flesh. "This is fraud," she said. "Not just civil fraud. Organizational fraud. Illegal boundary manipulation. Abuse of power." "What does that mean for the lawsuit?" I asked. Her eyes gleamed. "We'll get it dismissed. But if the judge sees what I see, there's a chance we can go after the HOA itself." My heart thudded. "Go after them how?" "They could be dissolved," she said. "Disbanded. Permanently." The idea hit me like a shockwave. The HOA that tried to extort me, gone. The smug president, powerless. Their reign of intimidation, over. But as the court date approached, a question gnawed at the back of my mind like a slow, persistent worm. If they were willing to fabricate Jews, invent boundaries, and sue innocent people, what else were they capable of doing to someone who pushed back? I started noticing cars slowing near my house. HOA board members lingering outside the neighborhood gate when I drove past. A couple of them whispering in corners during the pre-trial meeting, throwing me glances loaded with malice. It didn't intimidate me. It fueled me. The night before the hearing, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at the reflection of a man who had been pushed too far. I wasn't just defending my home anymore. I was about to take the whole HOA down with me. Revenge wasn't just a feeling now. It was a destination. And when I walked into court the next morning, binder under my arm, evidence ready like arrows in a quiver, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. They picked the wrong person to sue. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and polished floors, a scent that felt oddly appropriate for the battle I was about to fight. I arrived early, too early, and spent the extra minutes pacing the hallway, my binder gripped so tightly my knuckles went white. Across the hall, the HOA board members gathered like a pack of vultures, whispering, glancing toward me, smirking in their smug little circle. Graham stood in the middle of them, tie perfectly scented, confidence radiating off him like cheap cologne. He really believed he was going to win. He really believed they were untouchable. That belief was about to implode. The bailiff called us in, the sound of his voice echoing off the courtroom walls. I walked in with my lawyer, Mara, who moved with the cool assurance of a professional about to sink her teeth into a victory. The judge, an older man with silver hair and the sort of expression that suggested he had no patience for nonsense, took his seat. "Case number 21 to 581, he said. "Oak Crest Homeowners Association versus Daniel Mercer." The words settled into the air like a weight. Graham rose first, full of confidence. "Your Honor, the defendant owes 3 years of unpaid dues. We have provided notices, documents, and records to demonstrate that his property is within the boundaries of our association." The judge glanced at him. "Mr. Mercer is not a homeowner within Oak Crest." Graham didn't flinch. "He is, Your Honor. The HOA boundaries were expanded in 2019 to include his road." I saw the small twitch at the corner of the judge's eye. "Show me." The HOA's attorney handed over a packet of documents, all neatly printed, all looking official. The judge flipped through them with careful calm. Then his brow furrowed. He checked a map, then a date, then another document. He looked up slowly. "Why is there no signature from the county clerk?" he asked. The HOA attorney hesitated. "It was handled internally by the association. Boundary expansions must be recorded with the county and signed by the proper authorities," the judge said. "This is basic procedure." Graham cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we assumed." "You assumed." The judge cut in, raising one eyebrow sharp enough to slice granite. "You cannot simply expand your authority without legal documentation." The room went quiet. Mara rose. "Your Honor, if I may present our evidence." The judge nodded. This was it, the moment everything shifted. Mara walked to the center of the courtroom like a storm in heels. "We contend the Oak Crest HOA knowingly fabricated boundaries, attempted to annex properties without consent, and abused its authority to intimidate homeowners. Furthermore, we have documentation proving intentional misconduct." She handed the judge our binder. He opened it. He read. His expression darkened. Then Mara struck the killing blow. We direct the court's attention to page 27, a transcript from the HOA's annual meeting where the president openly discusses expanding boundaries without owner knowledge in order to increase dues revenue. The judge flipped to the page. His eyes scanned it. His lips pressed together. Graham paled. "Your Honor," he started. "Quiet," the judge said sharply. The courtroom fell into utter silence. The judge read the quote aloud, each word landing like a hammer. "If we expand the borders just a little each year, we can double the property count. People don't read the fine print. They'll cave once they get sued." The sound echoed through the room. A murmur rippled among the spectators. Even the bailiff glanced up. Graham began sweating through his neatly pressed shirt, his smirk long gone. Mara continued, relentless. "Your Honor, not only is a boundary expansion invalid, it was an intentional act of fraud meant to financially exploit homeowners not under the association's jurisdiction. And to threaten them with legal action," I added. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Mercer, you purchased a property knowing you were outside the HOA." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I researched it thoroughly. I confirmed with county records. I have never used HOA facilities, never signed an agreement, never received legitimate notice." Mara handed over the county plat maps. "Here are the official documents showing his property is fully outside their boundaries." The judge examined them. No hesitation this time. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Then he closed the binder. He set it down. He took a deep breath. "Mr. Graham," he said, voice icy and controlled, "would you like to explain why your association filed 11 lawsuits over similarly disputed boundary expansions in the past 5 years?" The room froze. Graham stuttered. "We believed." "You believed," the judge repeated slowly, "that you had the authority to annex property owners at will? That you could threaten them with financial penalties unless they paid dues they did not legally owe?" His voice grew sharper, angrier with every word. "This is an egregious abuse of power. This court does not tolerate intimidation, nor does it tolerate fraudulent claims." The HOA attorney stood helpless beside a man whose arrogance had finally backed him into a corner. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Mercer, your case is dismissed with prejudice. You owe nothing, and you will not be troubled by the Oak Crest HOA again." My chest released a breath I felt like I'd been holding for weeks. Relief washed through me, briefly, because the judge wasn't done. He turned back to the HOA. "Given the evidence provided by the defendant, this court is referring the matter to the county for investigation. The integrity of this HOA is in question." A gasp rippled through the board members. The judge continued. "Preliminary findings suggest this association has repeatedly and knowingly violated county regulations, property laws, and the rights of homeowners. Pending investigation, I am issuing an immediate injunction preventing Oak Crest HOA from collecting dues, enforcing rules, filing lawsuits, or initiating any action against homeowners." Graham's mouth fell open. The judge delivered the final blow. "If county official confirm fraudulent boundary alterations and unlawful expansion of authority, this HOA will be dissolved." The word hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Dissolved, disbanded, destroyed. Exactly what they deserved. The courtroom erupted. Whispers, gasps, angry mutters from the board, sighs of relief from spectators who had likely fought their own quiet battles with the HOA. Graham looked like someone had yanked the ground out from under him. He slumped into his chair, defeated, robe and gavel justice finally catching up to him. Mara packed our documents with a triumphant smirk of a seasoned predator. "Told you we had them," she whispered. As we walked out of the courtroom, the HOA board glared at me with venom. Graham shot up from his chair and hissed, "You think this is over?" I turned to him. "No," I said, "but you're finished." He stepped back, face twisted with impotent rage. Outside the courthouse, several former homeowners, victims of the same boundary scam, approached me. They thanked me. Some even teared up. It wasn't just my victory. It was theirs too. Within 2 months, the county investigation concluded exactly as we expected. Illegal expansions, fraudulent filings, misuse of authority, and a long pattern of intimidation. The court issued the final order. Oak Crest HOA was officially disbanded. Every board member was removed. Every fraudulent boundary undone. Every homeowner vindicated. Graham was fined heavily and barred from serving on any HOA board in the state for life. When the news came in, I stood on my porch, the same porch where I had once opened that threatening envelope, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. They had tried to drag me under. I dragged the entire HOA down instead. In the end, they didn't just lose their case. They lost everything. And I got my revenge. Slow, precise, and absolute,